Hi there bookish friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Megan and today I'm coming at you with a video talking about Anne of Green Gables and why she's my favorite character and also why she is 100% autistic. So let's get into the video. Also, I'm autistic as well, and growing up I heavily related to Anne because of how she reacted to things and a lot of those things that I did as well growing up autistic, and it was really nice to see some representation when there really isn't a lot out there, especially for autistic women. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples and reasons as to why Anne is autistic or neurodivergent, and you can disagree with me if you want, but you'd be wrong. First of all, Anne uses her imagination and relies on it very heavily to get through her day-to-day life as she's living in an orphanage, and then when she comes to Green Gables, it's something that she uses all the time to help her cope and deal with trauma. That's not specifically an autistic thing, but I noticed it a lot with me and my other autistic friends, so I'm using that as my first example. And then also the fact is that she talks all the time and she can't seem to pick up on the social cues as to when it's appropriate to stop talking or when somebody isn't actually listening and when you should let somebody else talk. Those social cues are something that she just can't pick up on, and that was something that I did as well growing up. I could not for the life of me pick up on when I was talking too much, so I would often ask people, if I'm talking too much, please tell me. Because I was very aware of the fact that sometimes people would just get really annoyed with me and I didn't always know why. I really related to Anne on that front. And then there's the fact that she often gets in trouble for things that she really doesn't always have control over, or things that just happen to her, and she just is getting in trouble for how she reacts to them a lot of the time. And I saw that with a lot of neurodivergent kids. I as well would get in trouble for simple things like stimming with bracelets and other little things that I would just do without really knowing that I was doing them. For example, when Anne is getting teased by Gilbert about her hair, she turns around and she smacks him so hard, and it's an iconic scene, we all know it, but it definitely seems to me as that's something that autistic people would do because we can be very over emotional. I know that I can be very over emotional at times, and I also don't always know how to use my words to tell people that I don't like this and that this is bullying and to please stop. And when I was a kid as well, like when Anne was 11, this happened when Anne was 11, and when I was a kid as well, I would get into fights with people sometimes, nothing heavy, but I would kick or punch or hit kids because I was being bullied or I was being teased and I didn't have any other ways of coping with it other than hitting them, so they would leave me alone. I didn't know how to use words to say, stop, I don't like this. I would just hit them. That's the only way I knew how to handle those situations, so I was constantly getting in trouble for those things as well as Anne. And also how Anne introduces herself saying it's Anne with an E. It shows she might have a little bit of OCD, which is often something that autistic people have, in how she wants her name to be spelled like it's got to be this way, or it just frustrates her so much. It's just one of those little things that wouldn't bother most people, but people who are neurodivergent, sometimes those little things can just drive us up the wall. Also, how she tends to overreact to other things. I've already mentioned how she overreacts to Gilbert teasing her. Not that he didn't deserve it, but it was a little bit of an overreaction, and it's one of my favorite scenes still. But she does tend to overreact to things. For example, when Miss Stacy, her new teacher, is coming over and she's very excited to have dinner with her, she forgets about the pudding that she's left out, and a rat gets in it and dies, and when she goes to give the pudding, she is so upset about it, and everybody else is just laughing, and she's absolutely mortified. She has a bit of an overreaction because it's just pudding, it's really not the end of the world. And I know that little things like that would send me over the edge as well, and I highly related to how Anne reacted to everything. That's another thing that I've noticed with people like me who are neurodivergent or autistic, ADHD, is that sometimes things just happen. We're trying to do the best, but sometimes things just happen, and then we get in trouble for things that we really had no control over. For example, when Diana comes over to Anne's house and they have tea, but Anne accidentally gets Diana drunk by giving her the wrong drink, And then everything just completely falls apart after that, and Diana and Anne are separated because Diana's mom was really upset with Anne for this, but it's not really anything that Anne had control over. It was just an honest mistake. And I know that I have made so many mistakes like that where things just sometimes spiral out of control, and that's just another scene that I think proves my point how Anne is autistic. All of Anne's reactions are a tad bit over dramatic, and that's because she feels emotions so strongly as I do. I get very upset when things don't go my way, and I can spiral out of control quite easily. And I also really related to Anne because she really didn't want to grow up. And it took me a while to grow up as well. Being autistic is sort of described as a developmental disorder, and I wasn't quite at the same level of maturity as my peers were growing up. And when I became an adult and had to figure out how life worked, it was very difficult, and I love seeing Anne in the later books struggling with growing up and not wanting to change and fall in love and get married and grow up too fast. She wanted things to stay the same, which is another thing that I relate to with Anne, because being autistic, we really tend to hate change. Change is really difficult for us to accept and to deal with, and I felt like Anne really struggled with this as well when her friends were getting married, when people were moving, when life was just changing around her and she had no control over it, and it just really upset her and stressed her out. I felt that really hard reading those books because, especially as I got older and realized I am nowhere near where so many of my peers are, and I don't want what they want. I still want to be a kid. I don't want to grow up. Like, why do I have to grow up? I really related to that. Another reason that I really related to Anne and think that she might be autistic is that Anne really wanted that one bosom friend, and she got that in Diane. And growing up, I always wanted like one good friend. Like, I always wanted to have a one best friend who I could talk to with things, and we could share silly stories and play games together. That's what I wanted growing up. I really had a hard time connecting with a lot of people. Big groups were not my thing. I was a lot better one-on-one with someone. So I'm not sure if that is necessarily like an autistic thing or if that's just a me thing. But I know that Anne just really loved hanging out with Diane and having that one bosom friend, and I really related to that growing up because that's what I always wanted. Another reason that I think that Anne is autistic is that she doesn't have a good ability to lie. And the first and only time that I can remember Anne telling a lie in the books is to get out of trouble with Marilla and be able to go to this picnic that she's been looking forward to for weeks. Other than that, there is no times when she's lied, and she's just very honest and honest to a fault, I feel like, at points. And that's something that I cannot for the life of me tell a lie. If people ask me a question, I tell them what I think. And sometimes it gets me into trouble because if it's an answer they don't want to hear, I just won't talk, but my facial expressions very much give away what I'm feeling in those moments. So it never works out well for me. So those are all the reasons why Anne is definitely autistic. And I also want to talk about a few other things of why I love her. First off, her romance with Gilbert Blythe is perfect. It is one of the best romances out there that I have ever read. It spans over 8 books, and it is beautifully told, and I love them together so much. They are the best fictional couple that I've ever met. From their enemies to lovers kind of trope, and it's great seeing them compete against each other in the first book for a scholarship, and forgiving Gilbert eventually, and then becoming friends, and then becoming romantically involved. It's really one of my favorite romances ever. I have a hard time finding anything that competes with Anne and Gilbert as a fictional couple. They are just the best. Now I just kind of want to recommend you all to read these books. If you haven't read them and you're interested in this, you probably are if you clicked on this video. If you don't know, because not everybody does, there are 8 books in the series and then a collection of short stories. The first 4 books I have here: Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, Anne of the Island, and Anne of Windy Populares. And these first 4 books are all about Anne before she gets married to Gilbert, and they're all full of her wacky adventures and shenanigans that she gets herself into by just being herself. The 4th book here, Anne of Windy Populares, is the one that is told from letters that she sends to Gilbert. The letters can get a little long at times and a little too flowery for me, but Ellen Montgomery does actually cut her off, and in the book sometimes she says, Anne wrote another 3 pages of descriptions of her love to Gilbert. but we don't need to read that. And she just left those out, which I thought was kind of cute and funny. So yeah, the first 4 books are before Anne gets married to Gilbert, and they're all really fun. If you haven't read them, I would definitely recommend if you like Anne of Green Gables, because Ella Montgomery's writing just keeps improving and the story just keeps getting more interesting, and we just keep meeting so many fun and unique characters throughout the books, and we get to see Anne change people's lives for the better, and I just love these books so much. I have different editions for the next 4 books in the series. The 5th one is Anne's House of Dreams, the 6th one is Anne of Ingleside, the 7th is Rainbow Valley, and the 8th is Rilla of Ingleside. So I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the last 4 books in the series, or all of them except for the first one really. But in the 5th book, Anne's House of Dreams, is when she and Gil first get married, and she makes a couple, and she makes friends with this widow, and she helps her with her struggles. And it deals with the first few years of their marriage. It's really sweet at points, and it also has some more heartbreaking moments in it, because Anne and Gil are grown up and married now, and sometimes life just doesn't always go the way you want it, and I really love how Ella Montgomery wrote this book. It's only like 230 pages, but it was really nice to be able to get a little bit more time with Anne and Gil as a married couple. And then the sixth book here, Anne of Ingleside, it is a little bit longer. This one we are following Anne still as she has 5 little kids and is sort of struggling, is sort of hitting that kind of like late 30s, nearing middle age almost, and she worries that Gilbert isn't in love with her anymore, so we deal with a few of her struggles getting older and her relationship with her husband and her children, and it really is just another fun story that I would recommend you to read. I would definitely recommend. I had a lot of fun reading this, and this is the last book in the series where we follow things from Anne's point of view only. And the 7th book, Rainbow Valley, is all about Anne's 6 children and the wacky adventures that they go on. And it's also about a young girl who is an orphan who they are trying to find a family for. And it's a really sweet and fun story that, again, I would recommend. And I really enjoyed this when I read it a few years ago. So yeah. And the last book that I want to talk about quickly is Rilla of Ingleside. This is the 8th book in the series, and it follows the point of view of Rilla throughout most of the book, who is named after Marilla, who at this point has passed because Anne's in her early 50s at this point. This book is a lot more serious than the other books because it starts right before World War I, and it lasts throughout the whole 4 years of the war, and it hits you with a lot of intense emotions at times, but I would definitely recommend reading this because Ella Montgomery did live through the First World War. She lived until 1942, so a lot of what she is writing here is what she experienced and felt during the war or living in PEI. It was really a beautiful story, and we're following Rilla when she's 15, 16, and she ends up having to take care of this baby whose mom has died and whose father is away in the war, and she takes care of him. And we see her grow up through this and see her deal with the harsh realities of living through a war and growing up and becoming a mature and better person by the end of the book. And it really is a wonderful story. It's one that made me cry at points and laugh, and if you make it through all the other books, definitely read this one. It's really worth your time. And then if you're still looking for some more Anne of Green Gables books to read, there's a little Chronicles of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery. That is a collection of short stories from other characters' point of view, and it's a lot of fun as well. It's just a cute story. It's just a cute book with short stories in it, but Ellen Montgomery's writing really shines through this, and I really enjoyed reading this little book as well. So that's all I have to say for this video. I hope that it wasn't too all over the place like my brain can sometimes be, and I hope that you did enjoy it. And if you love Anne of Green Gables as much as I do and love talking about the characters and everything, then you can comment down below who your favorite character is, or what your favorite moment is, or if you have read any of these books, or if you're planning on reading any of them, because I would love to talk to you guys about these books because I love them so much. And yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you for sticking through if you have, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!